Now for moving on to our Ross winners, I'd like to introduce Stephen Byrns. Stephen founded the Untermeyer Garden Conservancy in 2011 and is its president. A graduate of Princeton and Columbia Universities, Stephen is a founding partner of BKSK Architects, a successful architectural firm here in New York City that was established in 1985. Stephen was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg to serve as a Landmarks Preservation Commissioner on the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission from 2004 to 2010. He served on the board of Wave Hill from 2000 until 2010. He lives in Yonkers in the 90s, and when he discovered Untermeyer Park and Gardens, he rediscovered it when they were told that the fountains had been turned on after decades of reuse. The more he learned about Samuel Untermeyer's garden, the more he was convinced that a conservancy should be established to work with the city of Yonkers to make it once again one of the greatest gardens in America. A board of directors was established, and Marco Polo Stefano, the retiring founding director of horticulture at Wave Hill, was engaged to be the Conservancy's horticultural advisor. Sufficient funds were raised to hire Timothy Tillman to be its first horticulturalist in 2011, and there is currently a staff of 7 horticulturalists at the garden. Stephen started full-time work at the Conservancy in early 2016. Recognition of the Conservancy's efforts has been swift and widespread, with significant coverage from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Martha Stewart Living, and many other publications. The gardens are once again a fantastic showplace, and they are attracting people from far and wide. Stephen couldn't be with us this evening, but speaking on his behalf is Jessica Norman, one of the horticulturalists at the Untermeyer Gardens Conservancy. Jessica.
As mentioned, the president of the Untermeyer Gardens Conservancy, Steve Byrns, regrettably could not be present today and asked that I speak for him. I'm Jessica Norman. I'm a gardener at the Untermeyer Gardens Conservancy. The ongoing restoration of this great garden is truly the project of a lifetime. Samuel Untermeyer's gardens are celebrating their centennial this year and were lauded by the national press as America's most spectacular garden in the 1920s. Untermeyer hired Wells Bosworth, the architect of John D. Rockefeller's house and garden at Kykuit, to design, quote, the finest garden in the world. His vision was grand, and so was ours. From 1946 to 2011, Untermeyer Gardens slowly then rapidly declined as its owner, the city of Yonkers, lacks the funding and expertise to maintain it. The stupendous architecture, with its massive stone construction, extensive mosaics, monumental walls, waterfalls, fountains, and 2 monolithic ancient Roman columns, all were exposed to the elements and required substantial expert care. This is at last now occurring and will take a long time to complete. Everyone knows that a garden not actively maintained will go quickly downhill. This happened at Untermeyer in spades. Many areas reverted to jungle with fallen trees, bramble, and vines crawling over a once intricate landscape. The Pompeii-like process of unearthing and revealing its hidden features has been thrilling, and as an aside, exhausting. Even more thrilling is to see the sophisticated and beautiful horticulture now being practiced in the garden, led by head gardener Timothy Tillman and the expert advice of Marco Polo Stefano of Wave Hill fame. Great horticulture is now being wedded to great architecture. A new gardener has been added to the staff each year, now totaling 7, far short of Samuel Untermeyer's 60 full-time gardeners. But we're making progress. In 6 short years, annual visitation has grown from 5,000 to 60,000 people from near and far. The media, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Martha Stewart Living, discovered the garden and gave it extensive coverage. The Untermeyer Gardens Conservancy is grateful to the Institute for Classical Architecture and Art for its recognition for our efforts through the Arthur Ross Award for Stewardship. Thank you so much.
For those of you who've had the very good fortune of visiting John Bryan's spectacular farm outside of Chicago, it's a rare treat. John Bryan, retired CEO of Sara Lee Corporation, is a cultural leader, philanthropist, and preservationist. He is past chairman of the board of the Art Institute of Chicago, chairman of Chicago's Millennium Park, and he led efforts to preserve and restore Daniel Burnham's Orchestra Hall and the Lyric Opera House in Chicago. John and his wife live in this beautiful, landmarked, and conserved 1926 colonial revival home by the legendary, wonderful David Adler. It is located on Crabtree Farm, a preserved and repurposed early 20th century dairy farm by Solon S. Berman. John is a collector of English and American decorative and fine arts, and he is currently working with Illinois' First Lady, Diana Rauner, on the preservation and restoration of the Illinois Executive Mansion in Springfield. We are delighted to give the Patronage Award this year to John Bryan.
Well, I think I'm supposed to tell you why I'm here tonight, or why I might be thought of as worthy for this award. So I had to sit down and think a little bit about it. The fact is that I was invited to make a few comments about what led me to become a patron of the arts and architecture, as well as a rather avid promoter of preservation. Since I'm foremostly a business person, there certainly was a business motivation to my beginning. As was suggested, for all of the last quarter of the 20th century, I was the chief officer of a sizable American corporation. And it was during a time that corporate leadership was significantly measured and applauded for what was called corporate responsibility and involvement in the communities in which they did business. At the time that I headed the company, we required all of our officers and managers to be involved in the communities, and we shared our resources with the community at a significant level. Generally speaking, people got involved in whatever their interests were, because it's an old axiom, but people do work better on things that they're interested in. But for better or worse, and it's another subject, corporate engagement in the community today is less of an imperative than it was back in that time. But for me, that particular business motivation met up with and was coupled with the lifelong interest and a passion that I've had for the arts and architecture and design. I'm really not at all sure where that came from. It's some sort of an accident. But I am much inspired by the visual arts, museums all over the world, art collecting, architecture. It's a lot of fun. But as you must know, I'm a complete amateur in that world. I have no training. I have no credentials whatsoever. And as a result, I rather quickly realized that my highest utility in that world was not to tell the professionals how to run their institutions. Rather, it was to do one simple thing, and that was to raise money. So I learned to like raising money. It is greatly challenging. It is a very satisfying activity. It's really not much different from what I did as head of a consumer products company, marketing and selling consumer products and services to customers. All the principles are just the same in trying to get people to part with their money for recognition or whatever. So that's the route I've taken. I've done what you told me to do, and I've enjoyed it. I've been greatly satisfied with the activity that's led me to this award tonight, and I recommend it all to you.
Our next winner for publishing this year is Kevin Lippert and the Princeton Architectural Press. I talked to Kevin before this, and I said, you're going to curse me first, but I've actually cursed him already because there's French in this introduction, and I don't speak French. So bear with me. But I'm very proud to introduce Kevin. He's the founder and publisher of Princeton Architectural Press, and he has made a unique and lasting contribution to architects, historians, scholars, designers, the interested public, and authors of works on the built and visual environment. The 35-year legacy that he has produced is nearly 1,000 intelligent and stimulating publications on classicism, architectural design, landscape design, history, urbanism, theory, American architecture, sustainability, and innovative materials. An architectural graduate student at Princeton when he created the press, Kevin's impetus came from the creation of a full-size facsimile reprint of J.N.L. Durand's Recueil et parallèle d'édifices de tout genre, anciens et modernes, for his and fellow students' use, which included reduced-scale reprints with graphic fidelity that is still unrivaled. The press's classic reprints include Ledoux's 1847 L'Architecture, Hedgeman and Pete's The American Vitruvius, and a student version of Letraye's Édifice du Rome Moderne, co-published with the ICA, remain an inestimable resource for historians, architects, planners, and students alike. Kevin, we applaud you for this year's winner of the Ross Awards in Publishing.
I think your French is a lot better than you think. Thank you for that. I want to echo the thanks for everybody showing up tonight. It's hard to express what an honor and a thrill it is to be in this room with you and all these fantastic books around me. There aren't many awards in the world of architectural book publishing, as you can imagine. And I will never wake up to open the Sunday Times to see one of our books on the bestseller list. So this is great, and I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of it. And to echo also what Emily said, it's a sense of feeling that you're part of something much larger than just my little office there. I was asked to send some action shots of publishing. There are no action shots in publishing. So I was looking through the pages of a McKim Mead and White portfolio, and that's about as exciting as it gets at our office. So as you can tell, this is much more thrilling than an average day at the office. So thank you very much, and I hope you buy some architecture books.
Your audience is right here, Kevin. We are the ones who will always buy your books, no matter what. I'm now very pleased to introduce Carl Laubin, who is our Fine Arts winner this year. And the Ross jury, just so you know, they don't always give awards for every single category, and they don't always find someone worthy within each category. And so it is a true honor to be a recipient of a Ross Award. And we're very pleased that there's a Fine Arts Award given this year. So with over 30 years of experience, Carl Laubin's architectural paintings exquisitely incorporate classical elements. He has created architectural paintings for several noted architects, including Sir Jeremy Dixon, John Simpson, Sir Terry Farrell, Leon Cryer, and John Outram. Mr. Laubin has produced several Capriccio paintings, including 2 for the National Trust, another for the Centre Pompidou, and 2 pieces for the 500th anniversary of Palladio's birth. The Palladian paintings were the centerpieces of an exhibition at +1 Gallery in London entitled Celebrating Palladio, which he also helped curate. His most recent exhibition, A Centennial Journey, honored the architect Leo von Klenz and his significance in relation to British architecture. We proudly applaud Carl Laubin.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back in New York. I spent the morning at the Met, and I spent the afternoon at the Frick, so it's appropriate to end the day celebrating emerging excellence. Congratulations, Emily. I've been asked to speak briefly about what led me to the kind of work I'm doing. And I'm afraid the short and rather disappointing answer is I, like many other people, ended up doing what I'm doing by chance. Chance and stubbornness. The chance of having architecture suggested to me as a profession when I knew absolutely nothing about it. And the stubbornness of not giving up painting, which was my true passion. The chance of finding a great teacher and historian like Colin Rowe at Cornell in a sea of practitioners who may have been great architects but were rather indifferent teachers. The chance of moving to England and staying there when I was on my way somewhere else, leading to the chance of working for Jeremy Dixon, who had the foresight to see how to put my interest in painting to the service of architecture. The chance of being asked by Jean Détier to do a capriccio, a fantasy, so that I was led away from the world of architectural practice, just as computer graphics were making what I did in that world redundant. Now it is the stubbornness that is dominant and the resolve to sticking to what I believe to be important, working for a few years perhaps on a project of my choosing that means something to me, but may not have an obvious place in the world of the commercial art gallery. After studying architecture at Cornell, my wife and I moved to London, and I worked for Douglas Stephen and then Jeremy Dixon. When I was working for Jeremy, I was asked to produce some paintings of the office's work, Jeremy knowing that I painted in my spare time. Jeremy used the paintings well as a way of investigating the designs for the Royal Opera House, which we were working on. The paintings were constantly changing as they were used as a design tool, looking closely at how the design developed in 3 dimensions, changing the design and then changing the paintings, something that can be done with oil paintings, which I used, but not so easily with watercolor renderings. The other unique way Jeremy used the paintings was to insist that they should depict projects that we worked on as worthy of choice as the subject of a painting, rather than seeing the painting as a promotional image. The painting should have the drama and liveliness of a Canaletto or a David Roberts, with atmosphere, rain weathering the patina of age, even decay. I've tried to retain this view, begun with Jeremy, throughout my work, that the painting should stand as works of art in their own right, worth looking at, not just for the architecture depicted. Architecture doesn't stand still, and I have been fortunate that when one way of working came to an end, another presented itself. So when CAD came along and made it easier for architects to depict their own projects, I was fortunate that the idea of the capriccio was suggested to me by Jean Détier, who organized an exhibition at the Centre Pompidou about Bordeaux wine chateau. I did a painting as part of Jeremy's contribution to this exhibition. And on seeing it, Détier asked me to paint an overview of the exhibition, combining several buildings from Bordeaux in an architectural fantasy. This opened up a new type of painting to me, where I chose the subject, and the final product was indeed seen as a work of art rather than a promotional device for an architectural project. But a new way of working brings new problems. I was now faced with showing my work in galleries rather than being commissioned by architects. I have struggled with mixed results to get commercial galleries to show architectural work, not just mine, but generally. We managed to put on a very successful Palladio exhibition, which was mentioned for his Cinquecentenario at Plus One Gallery, but I found it very hard to introduce architectural drawings and models, even though they turned out to be extremely popular with the public. Living Bridges was the most popular exhibition the Royal Academy of Art ever mounted when it was put on. The Royal Academy version of Palladio's Cinquecentenario and another of their shows, Sensing Spaces, were also very popular. In the light of these successes, why does this bias against architectural exhibitions persist? I think people really engage with architecture. It's tactile, it's a hands-on art. The gallery world needs to catch up with the public's enthusiasm for architecture. It hasn't always existed, this enthusiasm, and it's a shame not to cultivate it now that it does. Thank you.